G'day everyone, welcome to my preview and review. Just one episode this week because I was out and about in Melbourne watching Freo get over the mighty Demons. And let's start with that game. Let's talk about round 11. I've made the great trip over to Melbourne. Got a red-eye flight on Friday. And was feeling a bit dusty at sort of 5:30am in the morning. Had a bit of a sleep, had a nice breakfast in Melbourne. They do say good food in Melbourne, and have to agree. We were staying in a nice place in South Bank, and a nice walk over to the MCG, about 20-25 minutes. And after about half of the game, the first quarter we were promising, didn't take our chances, business as usual sort of thing. Melbourne piled on a few goals. And at half time, I was like, gee, this isn't going very well. I've flown all the way over, and they're going to let me down. And I was okay with Freo losing in this game. I just wanted them to be competitive, and it threatened to be a bit of a blowout in that second half. But no, the boys switched it on. Whatever Justin said at half time, absolutely spot on. We were helped a bit by May going down and Petrarca being a bit under the weather, but they still had a lot of quality players out there, Melbourne. A lot of premiership players running around and doing it away from home at the MCG. And the boys went and got it done. So I'm very proud of their performance. I think Michael Frederick probably had his best game for us. Rory Lobb was really good as well. I was probably struggling to split the votes with them. And I see the coaches' votes have come out and they've both got 8 each. So I think that's fairly fair. Thought Lobb was probably more consistent throughout the game. Frederick had some better moments in terms of contributing to the scoreboard impact in the later half of the game, but we probably wouldn't have been able to stick in it without Lobb having some real key contributions, which hopefully he can keep churning that up, putting that sort of performance in, week out, because if he does, it'd be a very damaging player for us. It's a very hard matchup. He was getting involved in the ruck, he was getting it done up forward, he was floating down back and taking a few marks. So it was really good. I really liked Griffin Logue up forward as well, just to disrupt May a bit. I think he let him get to a couple of contests early, but sort of adjusted, and then May got knocked out by Lever. And then I thought he just really competed all day. He didn't get outmarked, he just brought the ball to ground and really gave Schultz, Walters and Freddie some stuff to work with, and it'll be interesting to see if they'll go that this week about Brisbane, but I'll get into that a bit later. So yeah, I was super pumped. It was a great weekend over in Melbourne, and the Melbourne fans were really pleasant at the game. I was sitting in the not quite behind the goals where the Melbourne's fans were, but not far away from that, so lots of D's fans, and yeah, they by far most of them took it well. There's always a couple that don't, but they were sort of congratulating Freo fans on the win and things like that. So they're quite gracious. Much better than the rowdy Collingwood fans that were at the Optus game the week before. And let's talk about some of the other games this week. I didn't watch too many of these because I was sort of travelling and just enjoying Melbourne a bit while I was over there. So the first game, Sydney against Richmond. I was sort of umming and ahhing with my tip in this one. I'd initially had Richmond and I changed it, and glad I went with Sydney. They just got over the line, and Richmond really should have won this game with the lead they had. But I think that's what happens. A lot of undisciplined play from Richmond as well. I was looking at the 50s conceded this year, and Richmond are so far away from everyone else. A lot of ill-disciplined acts from Richmond this year, and it's cost them in this game. And there's been a couple of close ones where they've just it has looked like they've run out of gas in a couple of games, but I think they've also just really coughed up momentum as well with just poor discipline. There's definitely one they could have won, and they'll be a bit annoyed at themselves. I was a bit bemused by Buddy challenging the 1 week suspension for a clear hit to the face. There was precedent that would get off after he elbowed Luke Ryan in the face and managed to get off with that, but unfortunately for Buddy, Trent Cotchin's a bit more well known than Luke Ryan, so he got done for that, and glad that ban was upheld. Brisbane against GWS. I did have a bit of a sneaky suspicion about GWS in this one. They came out of the blocks, I think, kicked 8 goals in the first quarter or something, but Brisbane reeled them in over the course of the game and got the job done. Geelong against Adelaide, didn't watch any of this. Geelong at home sort of got the expected result. Freo, Melbourne, already talked about this one. The first tip I actually got wrong in the round. Tipped against my boys, and I'm 0-2 when I tip against Freo. So maybe I should keep that going when I really want Freo to win. Doggies come over and absolutely smashed West Coast. I think they're a really good matchup for West Coast, even when they were playing well, because they like taking the game on with handball and flooding their numbers in the midfield, which is a good way to beat these sort of like chip mark style teams. And I think they'll be a tough team for Freo to play later in the year, but even at their best, they've matched up really well against West Coast, I've thought. So an undermanned West Coast, I always thought Doggies would do a bit of damage, which they did. Game I didn't expect to be such a huge margin was the Gold Coast Hawthorn game. They absolutely smashed Hawthorn. And that's the thing with Hawks this year. They can get a great win like they did against Brisbane last week, or the week previously, I should say. But they can just turn in performances like that. We just get smoked. So it'll be interesting to see if they bounce back this week. Saints got the job done over North. Then the last game of the second last game of the round, Carlton against Collingwood. Watched a bit of this in a pub in Melbourne, and it was nice atmosphere. I sort of, from the first 10-15 minutes, I went, oh boy, I've made a mistake here. I think Collingwood are going to win this quite easily. And they had better moments and probably didn't capitalise as much on the scoreboard. As soon as Wiedering went down, I thought Carlton would toast, and they actually got closer than they probably deserved to be, Carlton. Chance to win it with the Silvani snap and the Sam Walsh. Was it a free kick? Was it not a free kick? But I think Collingwood deserved to win this game. They had better moments overall in the game. If Carlton won it, it would have been sort of a few moments of brilliance to steal it. I think that Pendlebury hand pass, I've watched a lot of Collingwood games over the last decade or so, and Scott Pendlebury is this guy who just always has time, never gets tackled, always finds a teammate. It was just weird to see him hand pass it. I think it was to Howe 10 metres away, who got closed down, who just kicked it up in the air sort of thing. So you'd expect something a bit different in the last 20 seconds from Pendlebury. But they got the job done, and it's a bit of a weird one with Collingwood. They had a 30-point lead, I think it was, against Geelong, and coughed that up and lost in the last quarter. And they somehow lost to West Coast. So if they win both of those games, they're quite nicely placed in the top 8. I think their best side on paper is still quite decent. They've got a lot of those older, more mature guys who've been around for a while, guys like Pendlebury and Crisp. It's good for them to have Elliott back. I think he's quite dangerous for them. Myercheck, and I don't think he had a massive impact. And then some of the young guys are coming in and doing stuff like Henry and Ginnivan. And down back, they've got some solid players like Darcy Moore. He's a lot better than solid. Jeremy Howe's quite good as well. So I think their best team, quite good. But we saw when they got a bit of illness and one or two go out, that they are still quite thin. The guys that are going to come in are those younger type of players. So it'll be interesting to see how they go this year. They seem to have that sort of energy or vibe around the team that I think Collingwood sort of always had, as anytime, anywhere, or we don't care that pretty much everyone in the comp hates us. We want to stick it to you. And that's when they came over to Freo or Perth last week, the week before, and knocked us off. Collingwood are just one of those teams that have done that historically. They came over and beat West Coast in a final. They don't seem to be as phased as some other clubs when they have to go into that sort of pressure environment. So that's something that's in their favour, and the expectations weren't that high on them this year, so it was meant to be a rebuilding year. So maybe this year they sort of have a good year, maybe the year after, and then some of those guys Pendlebury, side bottom, retire. Maybe they start to peter out a bit, but you never know. Some of the times younger players come on a bit quicker than you expect. So just enjoy the ride, I'd say, if you're a Pies fan. And then pretty dour game at the last to end the round was Port Adelaide against the Bombers. Port, I thought, were home and hosed, had about a 40-point margin, let Bombers kick back into it. Rain came crashing down. It wasn't a great game to watch, really. Port just getting the job done, trying to get close to evening up their ledger, but sort of struggling to get over the Bombers, who weren't that impressive either. So yeah, pretty rough game to finish on. So let's get into round 12. And the first game is the Doggies up against Geelong. And a lot of people talking about, Dogs shouldn't be favourites in this one. Cats, it's one of those games where I think Cats have the better, the structure, like their backs and forwards, I think are much better than what the Dogs have. But the Dogs have a much better midfield ruck, particularly against Geelong. I think you can get Tim English in the ruck a bit against the Doggies, but who's Geelong got in the ruck? Like, that's been their weakness for a long time. And they look like they're just getting into a bit of form. So I'll be going for the Dogs in this one. And yeah, it's a tough tip. I can see people tipping Geelong. It's at Marvel Stadium as well, not GMHBA. Yeah, so I'll be going for the Dogs in this one Friday night. I think they seem to be coming back in form a little bit, but I don't think they're going to go on a massive winning streak of like 10 games in a row here. I think they will drop some in the sort of next little bit. They haven't been super convincing yet either. So I think if they beat the Cats, there's a bit of, Cats are a bit old, slow, and there has been a bit of that narrative this year. So they're definitely beatable this year, Geelong. It's not like some years past where they just rock up, chalk this one up, and, on they go. But, they've got quite an easy run from here, Geelong. So, even if they lose, probably still finish top 8. Adelaide against West Coast on Saturday. So, this game, a bit unsure. I was sort of leaning towards West Coast. I think I heard McGovern might be out, but now he's on the plane going over. Historically, West Coast have played well. I'm just checking the teams here. So typically, West Coast have played well over in Adelaide. Who have the Eagles named? They have named Jeremy McGovern. I think he's probably been their best player this year when he's actually got on the ground. He's had a few niggles and stuff. Adelaide have been decent at home. Outside the GWS game, I think it was when they got pumped. Even when they've lost at home, they've put in competitive performances. They pushed St Kilda and probably should have won that game with the opportunities they had. And they'd probably be looking at this game going, look, it's a good opportunity to get a win on the board. We've had a string of losses. And I think based on what you've seen this year, it's very hard to tip West Coast. So I'll be going Adelaide. Margin on this game, currently gone 16, but I might just boost that to about 26. So I don't think West Coast get flogged by 50 plus points again. I don't think there's that much difference between these two sides. But if they do, if West Coast get flogged by 50 plus points again, that's, I think, a streak of 8 plus 50 point losses, which would be the worst ever record in AFL, VFL history. Be hilarious if it happened, but I don't think Adelaide have that sort of defensive discipline at one end and offensive output to be able to just pile that sort of margin on West Coast. Gold Coast, North. You'd be shocked to see a game. I'm trying to remember last time I saw Gold Coast such short price favourites. $1.08. Huge a number of people tipping them as well. It looks like 98% of people are tipping Gold Coast. So it's only the rusted on North Melbourne supporters probably tipping them. I think they just get this done in Darwin. They looked very good last week and pretty hard to tip against them going against North Melbourne. We've then got Melbourne against Sydney at the MCG. I think Melbourne bounced back in this game. I think there were a few things that Freo potentially exposed that Sydney could follow suit with in terms of quick, direct play through the middle into their forward line. But Sydney have relied a lot on Buddy this year to kick a lot of their goals, and he's out for this game. So even though May's not there, I think they'll be able to cover him for this week. Logan McDonald and Sam Reid, you don't really see them probably getting off the chain. Papley, be interesting to see who they sort of put to him. He can do a bit of damage. But it has to be a game really I think where Sydney overrun Melbourne in the midfield, and I think Melbourne got touched up a little bit in the middle last week by Freo in that second half. And I think they'll be stinging a bit. So unless whatever bug Petrarca's got sort of spreads through to Clayton Oliver and a few other guys, I think Melbourne come out with a bit of fire in the belly and bounce back against Sydney. We've then got Hawthorn against Collingwood. I've been umming and ahhing about this game. I think Collingwood have been playing quite well. They're probably going a bit better than people thought they'd be going. And I'm going to be tipping them in this game. I do have some trepidation, though, because Hawthorn just, you don't know what you're going to get. Like the game against Geelong when they knocked them off. And like that first quarter performance, I think it was against Sydney, they blown them out of the water and they ended up getting reeled in. I got a similar feel before that Sydney game at the moment. I think, Hawks are really a chance. But they burnt me too many times, I think, this year, Hawthorn, where, I think they're good for an upset and they don't deliver. So I'll be tipping the Pies in this one, but it's definitely a bit of a danger game for the Pies. I can't just rock up and go, oh, hey, we've beaten Carlton and Freo, two pretty good sides in the last 2 weeks. We'll just walk it in against Hawthorn because they do have some players that can do some damage. And the last game of the round is Freo against Brisbane. And Freo were slight favourites before the teams come out, but it looks like they're even money now. And I think that's because Walters, Taberner, and Chapman are all out. So Chapman's been probably one of our best younger players this year. Walters has been, I'd say, steady and built into some stronger performances in the last 4 to 5 weeks. Been contributing with goals, some really strong pressure acts. And Taberner is really key to our structure. So even though he hasn't had a massive game in the last couple, that game against Collingwood was shocking, but against Melbourne, it just really helps with our structure having him there. It means Roy Lobb can go into the ruck. We've still got a tall presence, and then we're playing Logue up there as well. We looked more dangerous, and it's really bringing the ball to ground for our Smalls. When you look at sort of contested marking numbers, if they were going to put Griffin Logue on someone, I would have thought it'd be on Marcus Adams rather than... There's been a lot of talk about Harris Andrews, but Marcus Adams has had the much better year than Harris Andrews, in my opinion. And if you look at the intercept mark numbers, Marcus Adams is like way ahead of Harris Andrews. He's like near the top of the competition overall. So he's probably the player down back we need to worry about for Brisbane. But they've been leaking a lot of points. Like they gave up 90 odd against GWS, and they gave up 100 plus against Hawthorn last week. So if we think about shutting them down from the defensive end, so if we do go with Logue, maybe we don't play him up forward, we may play him down back because they've named McStay, Hipwood, and Darcy Fort. So you go Cox and Pearce, probably take 2 of those. They've then got the third player because you've got Oscar McInerney in the ruck, so maybe Logue does need to play down back. And maybe the balance is then just okay because Heath Chapman's out. You don't need to bring in another defender. But they haven't named Josh Tracy as part of that extended squad. So only tall player you could bring in would be Meek and go the extra ruck. You're saying Meek or Darcy will rest up forward and Lobb's going to play permanent forward. So there are a few things they can do. I haven't really liked the Meek-Darcy combination that much, and it would be good to see Lobb go again. From a defending perspective, looking at what they've put in the extended squad, I think they've only named Ethan Hughes here. So Wilson, Blakely, Meek, Croden, Hughes, Erasmus. So I don't think Wilson's much of a chance. He's sort of more of that player like Jordan Clark and Walker. So I think Ethan Hughes, if they're going to sort of go for a like for like, I think he would probably come in for Chapman, or they move Logue down back. And then for Walters, you're probably looking at someone like Erasmus, and then it does probably look like they'll go with Meek because no Tracy, and Amos has had the kidney injury, so he's out for the year. So I think it's an interesting one to see when the sort of final teams come out on Friday and how they match up on Sunday. Sounds like they're going to let Neil sort of run around, do his own thing for a little bit and just see how it's going, and then maybe they send Aish to him. So yeah, interesting mind games in this one. Brisbane, I think recent form, they're going okay. But I think they're vulnerable. They're not going as well as I've seen them play at periods last year. So there's definitely an opportunity here. It's probably one where you tip us in Perth and you tip Brisbane in Brisbane. So I'll be going to the game on Sunday, another Sunday afternoon slot, but it is a public holiday over here on Monday, so that'll be good. Yep, so longer video this week just due to me being away. With the bye rounds coming in, I might just sort of do a where I think a lot of teams are at, sort of a mid-season review next week. So yeah, let me know how you went with your tips last week. I got 7. And drop me a like and a comment. And thanks everyone. I'll see you all next week. Catch you later. Bye.